The morning sun cast long shadows across the military training ground as General Morrison walked between the rows of exhausted soldiers. His boots crunched against the gravel, each step echoing the frustration that had been building for weeks. Behind him, the target range stretched out for thousands of meters, marked by flags fluttering in the desert wind. 11 attempts, 11 failures, each one more embarrassing than the last. The general stopped and turned to face his assembled unit. These were supposed to be his best marksmen, handpicked from across 3 different battalions. Yet none of them could hit a target at 4,000 meters. The mission they were preparing for demanded nothing less than perfection, and perfection seemed impossible to achieve. "Gentlemen," the general's voice carried across the silent formation, "we have a problem." The soldiers stood at attention, sweat beading on their foreheads despite the cool morning air. They knew what was coming. They had all witnessed the failures, the missed shots that sailed wide or fell short of their mark. The enemy they would soon face had positioned themselves at an almost impossible distance, and traditional warfare tactics simply wouldn't work. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez, the unit's best sniper, had come the closest on his 3rd attempt. His shot had landed just meters from the target, but in their world, close meant nothing. A miss was a miss, and lives depended on absolute precision. General Morrison had been in the military for 32 years. He had seen action in 3 different conflicts and commanded respect from soldiers half his age. But this challenge was unlike anything he had faced before. The intelligence reports were clear. The enemy had established a position exactly 4,000 meters from the only viable approach route. Standard engagement distance for most military snipers maxed out around 1,500 meters under optimal conditions. The mathematics alone were staggering. At 4,000 meters, gravity would pull the bullet down significantly. Wind speed and direction could vary multiple times during the bullet's flight path. Temperature, humidity, and even the rotation of the Earth had to be factored into the calculation. It wasn't just shooting, it was applied physics at its most demanding level. Captain Hayes, the general's aide, approached with a clipboard full of reports. "Sir, we've analyzed all 11 attempts. Weather conditions have been optimal, equipment is functioning perfectly, and we've used our 3 best marksmen multiple times each." The general took the clipboard and scanned the data. Shot placement patterns, wind readings, atmospheric pressure measurements. Everything had been documented with military precision, yet the results remained the same. "Failure. What about the Barrett M82? The general asked, referring to their most powerful sniper rifle. "Tried it, sir. Rodriguez's best attempt with the Barrett. The .50 caliber round has the power, but even with our most experienced shooters, we can't achieve the necessary accuracy at that distance." Around them, the training facility buzzed with activity. Other units practiced standard drills, while maintenance crews serviced equipment. The normal rhythm of military life continued, but everyone was aware of the special project that had consumed weeks of effort with nothing to show for it. The general handed back the clipboard and stared out at the distant target. A simple black circle painted on white plywood, it looked impossibly small from where they stood. Through high-powered binoculars, it appeared manageable. But the reality was far different. "Sir," Captain Hayes said quietly, "there might be another option." The general raised an eyebrow. They had exhausted every conventional approach, consulted with experts from other branches of the military, even reached out to civilian competitive shooters. "What are you thinking, Captain?" "Well, sir, it's somewhat unconventional. There's a woman who works in the base commissary. Name's Sarah Chun. I've heard some interesting stories about her background." General Morrison had never been one to ignore unconventional solutions, especially when conventional ones had failed so spectacularly. "Tell me more." "She's quiet, keeps to herself mostly. Been working on the base for about 8 months now. But some of the other civilian employees mentioned she used to compete in long-range shooting competitions before moving here." The general's interest was piqued, though he remained skeptical. Civilian competitive shooting, while impressive, was vastly different from military precision under pressure. Competition shooters had time to set up perfect conditions and multiple attempts to adjust their approach. Has anyone actually seen her shoot? Captain Hayes shook his head. No, sir. Like I said, she keeps to herself, works her shift in the commissary, goes home to her small apartment off base, doesn't socialize much with the other civilian workers. The general considered this information. His options were limited. The mission timeline was set, and they needed a solution within days, not weeks. Traditional training methods had failed. Bringing in specialists from outside would take time they didn't have. What's her story? Why did she come here? That's where it gets interesting, sir. According to her employment file, she moved here from Montana after her husband passed away. Needed a change of scenery. Wanted something completely different from her previous life. The personnel office said she was overqualified for commissary work, but insisted that's what she wanted. Montana. The general knew that state produced some of the finest long-range shooters in the world. The vast open spaces and hunting culture created marksmen who could hit targets at distances most people couldn't even see clearly. Bring her in for a conversation, the general decided. Discreetly. Don't make it official or put any pressure on her. Just see if she'd be willing to talk. As Captain Hayes walked away to make the arrangements, General Morrison remained at the firing line. The afternoon was approaching, and soon they would attempt their 12th shot. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez was preparing his rifle, going through the same meticulous routine he had followed 11 times before. The general picked up a pair of binoculars and focused on the distant target. At 4,000 meters, even with magnification, it appeared as little more than a dot against the landscape. The human eye could barely distinguish it from the surrounding terrain. Yet somewhere on this base was a quiet woman who might possess the skills they desperately needed. As he watched Rodriguez begin his pre-shot routine, the general found himself hoping that sometimes the most unlikely solutions came from the most unexpected places. Sarah Chun was restocking shelves in the base commissary when Captain Hayes approached her. She moved with quiet efficiency, placing each item exactly where it belonged, never wasting motion. Her dark hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, and she wore the standard civilian employee uniform that made her blend seamlessly into the background of military life. Ms. Chun. Captain Hayes kept his voice casual, friendly. I'm Captain Hayes. Could I speak with you for a moment when you have time? Sarah paused, holding a can of soup halfway to the shelf. In her 8 months on the base, no officer had ever approached her directly. She kept her head down, did her job well, and avoided drawing attention to herself. That's exactly how she preferred it. Is there a problem with my work? She asked quietly, setting down the can. Not at all. Your supervisors speak very highly of you. This is about something completely different. Would you mind stepping outside for a moment? Sarah followed the captain out of the commissary, her mind racing through possibilities. She had been careful to leave her past behind when she moved to this desert base. Her employment application had been truthful but minimal. Previous occupation, ranch work and hunting guide. Skills, inventory management and customer service. Nothing that would raise questions or invite scrutiny. Ms. Chun, I understand you're from Montana originally? Yes, sir. She kept her answers short, still unsure where this conversation was heading. Captain Hayes studied her face, noting the caution in her eyes. She carried herself with an alertness that seemed almost unconscious, the way someone moved when they were constantly aware of their surroundings. I'll be direct with you. We have a unique situation, and we're looking for someone with specialized skills. Your background suggests you might have experience with long-range shooting. Sarah's expression didn't change, but Captain Hayes noticed her shoulders tense slightly. I did some hunting back home. Nothing special. According to some of your former colleagues in Montana, you were quite accomplished. State championship level, if I'm not mistaken. The silence stretched between them. Sarah had hoped that part of her life would stay buried along with everything else she'd left behind. Montana felt like a different world now, a place where she'd been someone else entirely. That was a long time ago, she said finally. Captain Hayes sensed he was walking on delicate ground. Whatever had brought Sarah to this isolated base, it wasn't just a desire for new scenery. People didn't usually leave championship-level achievements behind for commissary work unless they were running from something painful. Ms. Chun, I want to be completely honest with you. We have a military situation that requires a very specific skill set. Our best marksmen have tried and failed multiple times to hit a target at 4,000 meters. We're running out of options and time. Sarah looked out across the base, watching soldiers move between buildings in the afternoon heat. She had deliberately chosen this life specifically to avoid situations like this. After the accident that took her husband's life during a hunting expedition they had planned together, she had put her rifle away and never expected to touch one again. "Why me?" she asked. "Because our conventional approaches aren't working, and we need someone who thinks differently about long-range shooting. Someone who understands it as more than just military doctrine." For a moment, Sarah's mind drifted back to the mountains of Montana. She remembered mornings when the air was so clear you could see for dozens of miles, when the slightest breeze carried the scent of pine and possibility. She remembered her husband's excited voice as he spotted game in the distance, the way he trusted her completely when she lined up shots that seemed impossible to everyone else. "What exactly are you asking me to do?" Captain Hayes felt a spark of hope. She hadn't said no. "Just take a look at our setup. Talk to our marksmen about what they've tried. If you think you can help, we'd be grateful. If not, no harm done." Sarah was quiet for a long moment. Part of her wanted to refuse immediately, to retreat back into the safety of her anonymous life among soup cans and grocery schedules. But another part of her, a part she thought she had successfully buried, was curious about the challenge. "This would be completely voluntary?" she asked. "Absolutely. And confidential. If word got out that we needed civilian help with military operations, it wouldn't look good for anyone involved." That evening, Sarah sat in her small apartment, staring at a locked closet in the back bedroom. Inside that closet, wrapped carefully in soft cloth, was her custom rifle, a precision instrument that had once been as familiar to her as her own heartbeat. She hadn't opened that closet since moving to the base. The next morning, Captain Hayes found her waiting outside the commissary before her shift began. "I'll take a look," she said simply. "But I'm not making any promises." An hour later, Sarah stood at the edge of the firing range with General Morrison and his team. The morning sun was still low on the horizon, casting everything in golden light that reminded her uncomfortably of home. "Miss Chun, thank you for coming out here," the general said. "I understand you have experience with long-range precision shooting." Sarah nodded, but didn't elaborate. She was studying the range layout, automatically calculating distances and angles. Her eyes tracked the wind flags spaced along the course, noting how they moved at different intervals. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez approached with his rifle. "Ma'am, this is what we've been using. Barrett M82, .50 caliber. We've tried different ammunition weights, adjusted for every environmental factor we can measure." Sarah accepted the rifle and examined it professionally. Quality equipment, properly maintained. She brought it to her shoulder and sighted down the range toward the distant target. Through the scope, she could barely make out the target marker at 4,000 meters. "Show me your last 3 shot patterns," she said. Captain Hayes handed her a tablet displaying the impact locations. All the shots were clustered in roughly the same area, about 30 meters short and slightly to the right of the target. "Consistent miss pattern," Sarah observed. "That's actually encouraging. It means the shooting fundamentals are solid." Rodriguez looked surprised. "Encouraging? We missed every shot. But you miss consistently. Random misses would be much worse. This suggests a systematic error that can be corrected." Sarah handed back the rifle and walked to the observation table where weather monitoring equipment recorded wind speed, temperature, and humidity. She studied the data sheets from the previous attempts. "You're calculating for average